Hi, my name is Taylor Stark, and I decided to do my theory project over self-disclosure. So we'll just jump right in. First, I just wanted to define self-disclosure, specifically with a quote from the Encyclopedia of Communication Theory. The Encyclopedia of Communication Theory states that this is a personal information is noted to involve details and content that is not typically known and that the sender has selectively released. So I just think that this is really interesting that it's self-disclosure is all about what you decide to tell people, but can often be portrayed by what people know about you and how they decide to tell people maybe your personal information. I think this is where a lot of different things come up, especially in American culture, with maybe like that's not your secret to tell, or that's not your information to know, or a lot of how did you know that? It just really shows how individualistic we are as a culture. Furthermore, I think that the common picture of the onion is surfaced to kind of portray self-disclosure as a whole. So when you think of the onion, you think of the different layers and the circumference of the onion. So the first level might be where you're from, maybe your age, or maybe something that someone can assume about you from your appearance. And then you can kind of decide based on the circumference of the onion, how much of that you're going to allow someone to understand or maybe confirm what they already believe about you. As you get deeper within the onion, the information becomes deeper to who you are. So maybe at the core, it is maybe some trauma or maybe your past or where your ancestry, for example. I think that this is incredibly interesting because so many people have such different looking onions. Some people maybe aren't very in tune with themselves and maybe have very few layers that they even understand themselves compared to others who maybe understand their ancestry, where they come from, or why they are the way that they are, or maybe they just have a more colorful past than other people. But I do see this a lot in different cultures as well, so we'll jump into that. So I wanted to base this directly off of Hofstede's dimensionalizing cultures. And so I wanted to compare and contrast in the individualistic culture and the collectivist culture. So first off, I'll just kind of list off some things that I've noted here. So the individualistic culture, which I see a lot in my peers, would be desiring their rights to their own privacy, maybe stay in your business, acknowledging that speaking's one mind is healthy. I see this a lot within therapy. I feel like a lot of my peers go to therapy just for the sense of comfort. And also personal opinion is expected. We can compare this to a collectivist culture, which I kind of, when I see a collectivist culture compared to an individualistic culture, I think of maybe like a village, how people who live with their families are just simply more in tune with who they are and what their past is, and they're more likely to disclose information to their family specifically. So they stress the idea of belonging to their community, maybe having their place there. They desire to have a specific place in that society. That reminds me of Moana. They want to maintain harmony within their specific cultures and communities, and their opinions classified as an in-group. Like I said, this reminds me of the Disney movie Moana. I think it's really, really interesting that she didn't want to be a part of her in-group. Not that she wanted to be a part of an individualistic culture, but she just wanted to expand, which is so surreal, I think, for people who are used to living in a collectivist culture and kind of staying to what they know. So we will kind of jump into some examples here. As I said, the individualistic culture reminds me of my peers. So of course the United States is on there. We are all about, this is my business, that is your business, keep to yourself, this is my bubble, my personal space, physically as well as emotionally. I've never been to Australia or Europe, so it was really intriguing to me to see that Australia was on here, but I have heard them being very comparable, America and Australia, with some differences, of course. And then Great Britain, I feel like the stereotype for Great Britain or for Brits is that they are maybe not the most friendly people, but I don't really know. I have some friends from Europe and I think they're great, but very American-ish. They fit very well here. And then, of course, the collectivist cultures, you can see like Guatemala, Ecuador, Panama, Venezuela. Like I said, it reminds me of like a village. So I'm sure maybe some smaller countries in Africa that I probably don't even know how to say are in there as well. Okay, moving forward. So self-disclosure and emotional stability. So the relationship understanding between emotional stability, self-disclosure, and social adjustment by Mira and Ranknikar. They go on to quote that emotional stability positively impacts social interaction, positive events, positive emotions, pro-social behavior, and interpersonal interaction. I thought this was really interesting because, like I said, I see a lot of my peers going to therapy more and more, but they only choose to maybe disclose that with their closest people. Yet they trust this complete stranger to maybe hold their secrets and feel safe that the therapist has this. It's almost like a sigh of relief for them. And then in ethic, culture, and socioeconomic differences in young adults, self-disclosure, who discloses what and to whom, again, reminds me kind of what I just said. It is noted that self-disclosure protects the person from intrusive thoughts, frees up cognitive resources, enables insight, improves immune functioning, contributes to physical health, and allows for reorganizing and closure. A lot of my friends who just really exemplify the individualist culture, I think, as what are we, Generation Z, I believe it is. You can just see more and more that we're all about ourselves, and it doesn't really matter to us what anyone thinks about us, but also we're not going to push our trauma onto anyone else. But I also do think that we're more dramatic. So I think that taking these hardships or maybe just any stresses that we have in life, and I love how the quote said, improves immune functioning, contributes to physical health. Like, I think that is incredibly powerful for any person, but I do think that older generations or generations before Generation Z or maybe millennials have a different sense of pride than us. We definitely have a sense of pride, but I think it's they have found a different way to cope with things going on. Rather than disclosing it to other people, they have just made themselves stronger. So that was really interesting, just in terms of examining the world and understanding maybe what like my grandmother went through. If she and I had ever gone through the same thing, I probably would have gone to therapy for something where she would have relied on her family. And then again, I see this a lot in the in our culture, in the homeless population, as well as my immediate family and myself. So got everything here. I thought it was really interesting that we have such a vast homeless population here in Springfield, for example, and they are so willing to reach out to people. It's very bold. I feel like we're more bold if we decide to be. Again, I already touched on mental health and Generation Z, but we really just tend to stick to our immediate family and ourselves. If anyone's going to know anything about me, it's going to be my mom. But then you think of maybe my grandmother doesn't know that much about me. And then compared to the collectivist cultures, I feel like the homeless population there is treated with such respect, and they want to, I could see a collectivist culture bringing in the homeless population versus us, where we shut them out and we will stop at a stoplight 10 feet behind the line because we don't want to see a homeless person next to us or whatever it may be. But also the sense of trust in between the two cultures is very different because I feel like we've put that barrier there. I see collectivist cultures being more content with who they are because they rely on their families rather than strangers that maybe they are trying to impress. And I think their extended family feels just as much immediate family as it does for them, or just as much immediate family as like their parents, rather than here, as I said, I might not be that close to my grandmother or my grandfather. So I just thought all these points were very, very interesting in terms of the differences between American people in self-disclosure versus a different culture. Thank you.